Greetings and welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Poly Weekly News. I'm your host, David Danto, and last week there was another interesting industry event. We had Microsoft Inspire, which used to be a real show and is now a virtual show, and I have a couple of my Microsoft experts joining us here on the show today. First, my colleague, Joe Dalecki. Joe, say hi to everybody.
How's everybody doing? Good to see everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. And of course, Microsoft Teams expert extraordinaire, Tom Arbuthnot. Tom, as well, say hi to everybody.
Yeah, hey everybody, great to be on the show again. Always a treat.
And I think it was the two of you actually that spoke about Inspire last year. It might have been Ignite, or it might have been something else. But, there's so many shows. It kind of gets confusing. So Joe, give us a little bit of a background. Remind us what Inspire is.
Yeah, Inspire is a great conference where Microsoft really focuses on partner opportunities and what are they doing to help build that ecosystem for the partners and help build their opportunities. So it was a little bit different, over the last few years, kind of transitioning into more of that virtual presentation. And after having been to several Inspires in person, it's hard to gauge the energy a little bit differently in that virtual setup, but still a lot of excitement around some of the announcements that Microsoft made, and a lot to talk about and follow up on. So it was still a very good show. Just what we miss, I think, about most of it is being engaged together and seeing the people. So
pluses and minuses. You can also get up and go to the refrigerator or go to the bathroom whenever you need to, and but you're not traveling and you're not shaking hands. You're not feeling the excitement the same way you did in person. I hear you. I get that. Tom, your impression as well, was it hard for you to gauge the excitement as Joe pointed out?
Yeah, I definitely missed that. Like we all know this, you can't be in person to catch your peers, but we have lots of back channel chats going, and obviously there's all the social media going, so you can definitely get a feel. And if you watch Microsoft stock price this week, you can see that Wall Street certainly had a reaction to it. So yeah, some big news dropped.
Yeah, so give us the standing on one foot 35-second explanation of all the big news that dropped at the show, Tom. Just the highlights to start with.
Sure. So yeah, so high level, everything was AI. AI was everything, basically. AI infused into every product, everywhere. That's what Microsoft is excited about. So Copilot is their family name for AI tools. And then you have Copilot for different products and different suites. So in our team/UC/collab world, it's Copilot for Microsoft 365. We got the pricing for that. So that is $30 per user. So interesting reactions to that price point. Microsoft also announced a Bing Enterprise Chat, which is like a chat GPT for enterprise. And more in our UC space, there were some Teams phone announcements we can get into.
Yeah, no, and let's start one piece at a time. Let's start with the pricing. I saw our friend and industry colleague Dave Michaels talk about with the $30 announcement. He was well excited that Microsoft's going to pay him $30 to help train its engine, and it does raise the issue of privacy and training and who owns the intellectual property and who's charging who for what. So I'm assuming those are going to be things that Microsoft's going to have to parse out over the course of the next year or so.
Definitely, it's a really hot topic, obviously, and that was part of the conversation. So Microsoft has said multiple times that in the enterprise models, they're not using your data, they're not sharing your data, they're not training on your data. Obviously, we'll have to all look at the detail on that, but that's the stance. And that was the idea with Bing Chat Enterprise. It's just the Bing Chat, which is the commercial tool, but Microsoft are not absorbing the data, not training on the data. So that's bundled in the very top tier plans, the M365 plans, or it's $5 extra. Although Tim Banting, friend of all of ours, did point out that there's still advertisements being shown on the Bing tool while you're in Bing Chat Enterprise. So interesting point there, that although they're not absorbing your data, they're still serving up kind of adverts during the service, which I'm not totally happy about. If you're paying for an enterprise product, I think it should be a no ad experience.
Yeah, no, I hear the controversies, and I think this is going to be an interesting, brave new world over the course of the next, like I said, year or so, as we kind of shake these things out and figure out who's suing who and what authors are being sued and are suing for the training and all the rest of it. I mean, yeah. I'm tracking it very closely. Joe, do you agree? Was it AI everywhere?
AI everywhere. I kind of expected that going in. I expected to see a lot of AI. I was not disappointed. Certainly, AI is going to be a huge priority in everything they're doing. They already have the platforms and the data and the identity model. I think a lot of this now just becomes sort of the default of how we interact with our data, and how we get better results out of that data. I think the cost thing, just to go back to that for a second, certainly it does beg the question, how does this reach the mass adoption level that we kind of expect to get to at some point in the future? Obviously, at that price point, I think it's certainly going to be a much more closely watched expense. And so we'll have to think about sort of what makes the most sense. Who do we give this power to within an organization? Where do we get the most ROI out of that investment in the AI for each organization? And they'll all have to make that decision for themselves. But certainly that'll be a huge talking point for companies in the near term.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
No, so it's a big number if you do the maths of $30 per user and you multiply it by the users per month. It's definitely a big number, but I think we'll have to see how. I mean, none of this is GA yet. It's in a very limited number of customers' hands, all privately. Everybody I talked to at Microsoft who's got it, and that I would generally trust their opinion, that are not just cheerleaders, have said it is really impressive. But let's see when we get our hands on it. But I mean, you have to equate that $30 to time productivity savings and the salaries. And when you put it in that perspective, yes, it's a big number against other software SKUs that we might pay for. But I mean, if it saves you, let's be really pessimistic and say it saves you 5 minutes a day, that doesn't take long to get to $30. You're already there. So I think lots of companies will look at it and assess, is it driving a real productivity saving? That'll be the question.
Yeah, and it dawns on me, I like to think, the three of us and, the hundreds of us that would be in that larger group of collaboration experts are all starting from square one on this again. We're all learning about what AI can do and what some of the risks are and what some of the challenges are and what some of the terrific advancements are. But none of us are experts in any of this stuff. We're all going to kind of have to figure it out and crawl, walk, run, get there slowly. And that's kind of puts everybody back in a weird spot, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it really is interesting. Like, this is a whole new world for not just our industry, but multiple industries. So it'll be really interesting to see how it impacts it. But I think our space, particularly the knowledge workers and the UC and collab space, that's an immediate space that will see an AI impact.
Now, one of the other announcements that came out of the show, one of them is not new. We talked about it at one of the other trade shows. One of the other, and I'm going to put the link to the HP Poly newsroom here, so you can take a look at all that we announced. Some new Savvy headsets, and we formally announced the fact that our Edge E phones are now going to be available on Microsoft using the SIP gateway, which is an interesting kind of change, right, Tom? We were talking about that before.
Yeah, this is really interesting because it's SIP standards-based phones, but they're new model phones for Teams. So previously, SIP Gateway was seen as a migration tool to get away from SIP phones, but now we're seeing SIP Gateway for DeX with things like yours and other devices. We're seeing for new phones, we're seeing for ATAs, and we're also seeing mobile extension through SIP Gateway. So it looks like SIP Gateway is firmly here to stay.
Yeah, and those are some really awesome phones. We've carried them on the show before, the Edge E series phones. They're really beautiful. And Joe, I'm assuming you've had your fingers on them at some point.
I have, yeah, especially the Edge E series being new designs, and as well, we also announced our bulk onboarding tool for Lens. So it was a big desire to have a way to bulk onboard to the SIP gateway. So we've got that tool released through our Lens software management platform.
Very good. So, any other big announcements at the show?
Yeah, so zeroing in on Teams Phone, there were a few things. There's Copilot for Teams Phone, so back on the Copilot theme. That is Copilot augmenting meeting notes and minutes during PSDN calls or VoIP calls. Shared calling, which is sharing a single DDI over multiple users. So not all organizations want to buy a phone number for every user. Now they can have one phone number and share that on a kind of, lots of organizations don't give every single user a DDI, so that saves them cost. Teams Phone is going to roll out in India with partners over there, and Teams Phone Mobile increasing in terms of its markets for Europe. Those were the big ones for kind of the phone space.
So it's interesting. We've been talking about Teams exclusively, crazily hammering it for 3 years, and now we're talking about telephony again.
Yeah. I mean, telephony is still a thing. Microsoft still wants to push it, and Microsoft's theme in our space was pushing Teams Phone. Obviously, remember this is for partners, so it's giving them their marching orders for the year. Teams Phone, Teams Rooms, and Teams Premium. That's what Microsoft is aligning partners to say. We've got 300 million monthly active users. We'd love more, but that's a pretty good number. But now we're looking to add on Rooms, add on Phone, add on Premium. That's what we want.
Joe, what were your impressions from all those telephony announcements?
Yeah, well, I think, we're obviously trying to focus on the gaps, right? Where Teams Phone does need to fill in the gaps around, common area reception, those types of use cases where, shared device makes a lot of sense, but we need devices to really fill in the portfolio and the app to fill in those functionality gaps. So I think this is great. I think this does help overall sort of raise the bar for Teams Phone.
Were there any announcements, Joe, around more the room systems and Teams room experience and maybe front row and things like that?
I think the real highlight around rooms is just how rooms will be a part of that meeting experience, right? And how when we're in a meeting room, the experience shouldn't be any different than when we're at home. And so if we're leveraging things like Teams Premium, Teams Intelligent Recap, and those types of things, that's going to be honored by the room system. The room participants are going to be just as much an important part of that intelligence after the fact. And then also with the ability now to opt in for things like facial recognition and voice recognition when you're in a meeting room, and how you leverage that intelligence to build out your recap after the fact. That's going to be super key and super important for rooms to be equal participants in that meeting. So all good things to come, and how it all ties into rooms. On our side, we're super excited about the Studio X52, which we announced at InfoComm, but really starting to find its launch here. So really excited about that, and how that really enhances medium rooms all around. So.
Yeah, the camera is just an outstanding camera. If you haven't had a chance to see it,
Phenomenal
by the way, you should
camera.
go to one of the local HP and Poly experience centers and take a look at that 52 in action. You did raise an interesting point, though, that I think we have to address, which was the interesting announcement from Microsoft that they're going to start doing AI-based people recognition. We were chatting a little bit about that online during the week, very friendly chatting, and I'll keep friendly chatting about it. But the last manufacturer that introduced that did not go very well because there are a number of people in an enterprise who don't want to be recognized. So I assume the strategy around it now is that, well, you have to opt into it. And if you opt in, then you'll be recognized. And if you don't opt in, then you won't be recognized. That sort of fell apart the last time it was being discussed because people needed to be identified in order to know they weren't being opted in. So the recognition was still kind of taking place.
It is a real challenge. It's first the organization has to opt into the feature at all, then the individual users have to manually opt in. So you're right, it's unless everybody commits to doing it, it's a partial solution. I mean, hopefully for the people that want it, it'll give them a benefit because the transcript will give them their notes and their actions. So there's an interesting self-interest of it being better for you. But I think you're right, David. I think it's going to be, particularly in Europe, people are super sensitive over that stuff. So I think it'll be a long road. But I mean, we increasingly, obviously on our phones, we do that pretty much automatically now, most people. Windows Hello, people do it for login. So we'll see where the trend goes. Eventually, I think that'll become the norm, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, it's definitely going to be something that we're going to have to watch, because if the three of us are in a meeting room and our organization has opted in, and I've chosen that I don't want to be identified, then in order to not identify me, the intelligence in the system is going to have to do a recognition on me, realize that I'm not somebody who registered on the system, and say there's somebody that's not registered in the room. And even that may be breaking some of the PII requirements, which is why this whole scheme fell apart the last time somebody tried to do it. I think the difference between that and Windows Hello, which is an awesome feature, is it's always me and my device. I'm always managing it personally, and I can opt in or opt out or use it or not use it. But what's the old expression? I wish them great success, but I'm skeptical. it's going to be one of the things that we have to watch that's coming out of these announcements that I don't know
As
how
long
many
as you don't,
enterprises are going to.
as long as you don't wear my mask to your meetings, and you're fine.
Well, this also, it's a conversation that goes all the way back to when we were talking about compliance recording in enterprises in the financial services space, where a number of the compliance officers thought that it would be okay to just record the voice section of video calls. And then we asked them, what happens if a trader is saying, don't buy this stock, and holding up a sign that says, ignore me, buy this stock? You kind of, it's the 1 or 2% case that breaks the mold, because human beings are so dishonest sometimes, that prevents everybody from enjoying the technology. I don't know where it's going to go. Like I said, we'll have to watch it. I wish them great success, but it's going to be interesting. Europe's going to probably lead the charge on that one, as you say, Tom.
Yeah, we tend to be the region that is a very detail orientated, let's say, around things like PII and recognition. So I'm sure that the EU will have a lot to say about it.
If it wasn't for GDPR, nobody would have ever updated their websites for the last 6 years. So Joe, final thoughts. What's your big impression and your takeaway from Inspire this year?
Yeah, for me, I think, like you said earlier, it's really all of us starting at ground zero and relearning how do we interact with computers again. We've all learned how to interact with Excel formulas and command line prompts, but now we can interact with natural language. And so we're all learning how to prompt the AI to give us the information that we want, but we're doing it with just natural language. And so learning what possibilities are available there is going to be a process for a lot of people. And I think there's going to be a big learning curve to how we start to leverage the true power of AI. So Microsoft they announced that they have some skills building and modules that are available for training on how to leverage AI, and not just their AI, but to start to build your own models, which I think will be an emerging field very quickly here. Of how do we leverage open source AI to build our own model for us and have it do what we want it to do. So there's a lot of cool things to come out of this. I'm excited. There's just as many downsides as there are upsides, but I'm still optimistic and excited. So,
and at the same time, we will still be installing rooms and home systems and telephony and voice, and making sure that organizations can collaborate and live in a hybrid world where it's not the office or home, but both. It's and, not or. And all that happens in the background while we're learning about AI.
Exactly. We still need to interact with each other. And so there's still this need for great video and audio. So we're always going to have that need. It's just a matter of how do we leverage these new tools that we have in our toolbox.
Great. Tom, your takeaway, your thoughts, final thoughts on what you got out of Inspire this year?
Yeah, I think Joe nailed it. It's all about how AI changes the way we work, but only to your point, like the fundamentals are still there. Teams room, Teams phone, collaboration, like having a good experience, that doesn't go away. So I think we'll see AIs at really at the top of the hype cycle at the moment, and even if we're pessimistic and we say it's going to be 50% as impactful as people think, that's still massive impact. But the fundamentals of what we're all doing in UC and Collab are still soldiering on.
Okay, that's great. We'll kind of make that the last thought. Although, Tom, I think Joe and I are going to talk when the show is over, and we're going to ship you out a new headset, because I think the one you're using is starting to let us know it's on its last legs. So
you can do that. You've got my address.
Yes, we'll take care of you. We always take care of our friends in the industry. So Tom, if anybody wants to reach out to you, get more information about Empowering Cloud, how would they do that?
Yeah, it's empowering.cloud if you want Teams training, advice, and insights. And LinkedIn is usually where I'm hanging out.
And that's an important point, because I mess it up all the time when I'm reaching out to you. I do empoweringcloud.com, which is wrong. It's empowering.cloud.
So that's right.
You should probably buy the other one as well, just to have it. Just
yeah,
in
well,
case you need it.
when we can afford it.
Okay, no problem. And Joe, how would somebody get more information, reach out to you, chat with you if they want to?
Yeah, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to reach out to me if you have any questions or comments or just want to have a conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate the recap from Inspire this week, last week's show, and on next week's show, my friend and colleague Stephanie Borman will be with us, and she'll be talking about the HP Foundation. We do some really awesome things with the foundation, and she'll be on the show to describe it and give us some of the background and some of the places where you can go to get more information. But until then, I'm David Danto. For all of my colleagues at Poly and HP, thanks very much for joining us. We really do appreciate it every week, and we will see you next week.